Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as we recap Season 4. 9 of Season 1's 42 episodes are missing, along with 2 of Season 2's 39. Season 3 has got 45 episodes and 28 of those are missing, which means that season is firmly the beginning of recon territory. With Season 4, it only gets worse. Only 10 out of 43 episodes exist. But, with Galaxy 4 notwithstanding, Season 3 is almost a minefield of reconstructions. Season 4, it's not recon territory anymore, it's animation territory. And thanks to those official animation releases, this season feels more complete than it ever has. And particularly with the animation of the Evil of the Daleks being an improvement on the reconstruction, which is a rarity for me, I don't think I've ever found Season 4 as smooth a viewing experience as I have on this marathon. And it isn't just its largely missing status that was historically difficult for me. The shake-ups happening within the season made for choppy waters as well, and for the very first time we finish a season with none of the original cast members, and the complement that we do finish with were all introduced in Season 4. So it's not the longest season in terms of episodes, but it did most definitely used to feel like it. We met Jamie, said goodbye to Ben and Polly, and met Victoria. And in those terms, it sounds fairly straightforward, except that it wasn't. Season 4 pulled something that we have grown more than used to in 2023, gearing up as we are for it to happen again in November, which perhaps remains one of the most audacious moves any television programme has ever made. It replaced its leading man. Not just recast, which they could have done and just insisted it was the same guy, they changed his appearance and personality. This solved their immediate problem of an ailing William Hartnell, but presented them with some new ones. They now had to ensure that their new lead appealed to the audience both as a new character and as the same character they'd grown accustomed to. No easy feat, but if Season 4 has problems, and it does, one of its biggest successes is most surely the new Doctor. Now, I adore William Hartnell, and I couldn't even really see a man failing to the extent that he apparently was when I watched his final episodes. And even in those 2 final stories, which kick off Season 4, I still see a man with quite a lot left to give. But it wasn't to be, and in came Patrick Troughton, who, after a handful of episodes where he quite openly explores the character and its boundaries, settles down to offer up a different and no less wonderful take on the Doctor. He's no William Hartnell, but then William Hartnell is no Patrick Troughton either. They are different enough from each other that I prefer neither one of them yet. In my view, William Hartnell didn't get the swan song he deserved, and I used to think that Patrick Troughton didn't get the debut he deserved either. Now, depending on which way the wind is blowing, even though I do like Power of the Daleks now, I may still subscribe to that because however much I like Power of the Daleks now, it does kind of just get on with business as usual. But is that a bad thing? Because in a way, it does help sell the changeover. Yeah, okay, the Doctor's different, new person, what the fuck, etc. But here are the Daleks, and the show is pretty much as you remember. And as for the stories themselves, despite being fairly indifferent to Season 4 in the past, I have enjoyed each of them a little more this time around. Now, this may still be the first season on the marathon where I haven't felt compelled to award a story the full 5 stars, but I did warm up to each of them, to varying degrees. Some of them considerably enough to bung an extra star or 2, and some only slightly. But it still felt like a distinct improvement for each of them. We encountered pirates without it feeling like a pirate story. We met the Cybermen twice. The Daleks returned twice and were supposedly seen off forever. We went to 18th century Scotland, Atlantis. We encountered giant crabs running a holiday camp and chameleonic aliens running a travel company. So in a way, this season was all over the place as much as Doctor Who usually is. I said that Season 3 could be said to be the season where Doctor Who went apeshit, but that's to do a slight injustice to season 4. Now, season 4 is slightly less satisfying than the previous season, which means that my top 10, which I do in every one of these recap videos, remains largely unchanged from the last time, but with one new entry. Now, that new entry has obviously been recently appraised on the marathon, and the top 10 feels like I've discussed it at length a lot recently, particularly in the Hartnell stories, the full Hartnell stories ranking. So I'm not going to do a full top 10 here. I'll put it on screen and I'll show you where that new entry sits. So at this point in the marathon, this is my current top 10 as we finish season 4. Should the next season bring a bigger change to the top 10, I will of course revert back to doing a full top 10 like I have been doing. But at this point, the current state of it feels like a more in-depth one would just be me repeating myself again. It's different with the companions though. Yes, while there were fewer changes in companion personnel in this season, which was of course offset by the new Doctor, and while it's still too early to appraise Victoria at this point, we still have enough companions for a top 10 now. So, almost certainly the final time she will appear in the top 10. Sorry, Dodo. She was doomed from the start, treated as if she's in on the show's fundamentals when a vital part of the companion's journey is to become familiar with them over time. Treated with very little care. Again, this feels quite low for Susan at this early stage of the show's life, but it's important to note that importance to the Doctor doesn't necessarily translate to well looked after or well handled as a character, and such is true of Susan, whose stronger moments feel increasingly down to Carol Ann Ford's efforts rather than the show's. That a companion of not even a dozen episodes makes more of an impression to me than the Doctor's own granddaughter speaks volumes. Yeah, Jean Marsh is absolutely superb, but the character of Sarah is allowed to be far more interesting in such a short space of time. She's pretty much got an entire arc crammed into 8 episodes, which is more than Susan had in an entire year of the show. A new entry. Now, Polly got off to a blistering start. Her presence in the War Machines is invigorating. Her being there for the Doctor's regeneration is vital in selling the whole thing. But then, she gets less and less to do before succumbing to almost, in my opinion, the same treatment that Dodo got in her final story, in Polly's own final story. The only difference being, Polly gets to say a proper goodbye to the Doctor. Sharing her tenure with Ben makes her very much tied to him in almost the same way that Ian and Barbara are kind of like a Gestalt companion. But her character is a really good counterbalance to Ben, and I really enjoy their tetchy relationship with each other to begin with before they eventually sort of like get to know each other a little bit better and warm up to each other. But there are glimpses of independent brilliance as well, especially in the Highlanders. But with Jamie's arrival cutting into Ben's role, there really is no reason why Polly's part should be diminished as well. But upon closer inspection, and what leapt out to me a lot on this marathon is that she was never really given as much to do as Ben anyway. So while not exactly diminished, when she's in Jamie's company, her lesser drawn persona becomes slightly more noticeable before she gets put in a crate and out of the show. Annika Wills is, let me be clear, absolutely brilliant. And if Polly's sort of slight relegation is similar in a way to Susan's, Wills is such a strong presence that it's less noticeable. Polly is at this place on the list because where she started and where she ended up did not feel like growth. It felt like the opposite. Okay, what's going on? Ian is slipping down with each of these lists, but what can I say that I didn't say on the last one of these? Similar to Polly in terms of character growth, he at least didn't regress. And he had plenty of standout moments, but he has been bumped down by 2 new entries for season 4. So, where are they going to place? One of them right here. Now, if I was surprised to see Stephen overtake Ian, then I am shocked about this. I even did a recount. The thing is, on this marathon, it became far more obvious to me than ever that Ben is actually a very different type of companion from what came before. His debut in the previous season really impressed me, and I liked him a lot in season 4's opening 2 stories as well. He showed guile and bravery in both the Smugglers and in the 10th Planet, where in the latter he had to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Reacting to the change of Doctor in much the way the audience were made him that bit more relatable, and it looked like he'd go from strength to strength. But once Jamie joins the show, Ben's role is diminished, and he plays out his last couple of stories with much less to do, and therefore much less scope to impress. Which is a huge shame, because Michael Craze put so much into Ben that it borders on heartbreaking watching that potential just evaporate. Here he is. The brilliance of Peter Purvis's performance has come through on this marathon more than any other I've done, and it's a real pleasure to have come to like Stephen this much. It's absolutely one of the main reasons I enjoyed season 3 as much as I did this time, and it feels like Stephen often gets overlooked in the pantheon of great companions, and I'd quite like that to change. In that pantheon of great companions, it would be a surprise not to see Jamie mentioned. Being synonymous with the second Doctor, Jamie is a huge part of the 60s era of Doctor Who, so it's always really interesting seeing his integration into the show. When you think about it, that Troughton and Hines finished season 4 as perhaps the strongest Doctor companion pairing yet, it's easy to forget that both only joined this same season. Fraser Hines arrived on the show in little more than a medium-sized guest role and left the show as one of the most beloved regulars. The latter is a little way off from for this marathon, but on this marathon, like previous ones, I could never quite see why he was promoted to regular from his appearance in the Highlanders. It wasn't that it was bad by any means, just that it was a little fairly inconsequential. That he did get promoted to regular actually turns out to be one of the best decisions made by the production team since they cast Patrick Troughton. He is so impressive as somebody who views the rules of the show, with which we are all too familiar with by now, through the eyes of an 18th century Highlander. It's honestly a deceptively layered performance. By the time Ben and Polly have left and we hit Evil of the Daleks, his standing is such that he can full on lose it with the Doctor, and we are with him. It's a great character and it's played to perfection. So, why is Vicky ahead of Jamie? Well, considering how long he stayed, it could be said to still be early days for Jamie, whereas I'm not going to be seeing Vicky again on this marathon, so I can view her whole tenure as one. And she is so good, funny, mischievous, strong-minded, compassionate. She could so easily have fallen into the same pitfalls as Susan, Dodo and Polly, but never once does. Vicky is proof that not every young female character at this point in the show needed to be shortchanged. If Barbara is to ever lose this position, it won't be just yet. Since the last season recap, where I struggled to articulate why I love Barbara so much, I've tried to give it some thought, so I'm not just saying, just cuz. Well, I think it's because she feels so incredibly real. Ian is from the same time as her, yet he can hold his own in a sword fight with experienced soldiers on their own turf. And Barbara is far less gung-ho, which I think is just so much more relatable. Yeah, okay, so she takes out a squad of Daleks, but she does it through driving a truck, which most of us could do, and she admits to enjoying it afterwards, which most of us would. Barbara, for me anyway, feels like 1960s Doctor Who's most successful attempt at crafting a real human character and whisking them off into adventures in time and space. So, with this wonderful new Doctor and his dear, dear friend Jamie, along with the Victorian girl Victoria, I approach season 5. With season 4 only having 10 existing episodes, it has been the slimmest pickings in terms of existing Doctor Who, but thanks to the animations, more of it moves these days than in decades. Season 5 now has 22 of its 40 episodes currently in the archives, which once upon a time would have been daft to hope for. With the official animations continuing and much of them having been released since the last time I marathoned, I'm really looking forward to experiencing Season 5 in a way I never have before. And I'm rarely excited to get to Season 5. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this quick recap of Patrick Troughton's first season as the Doctor, then you know how YouTube works. Please do give it a like and share. And what do you think of Season 4? Is it a strong start for the second Doctor, or do you find yourself missing Hartnell terribly? Are we in safe hands with the new lineup, or are we about to enter shaky ground? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for another rematch with the Cybermen. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I will see you on Telos.